In a peaceful military town, where families trust in duty and honor, secrets are beginning to unravel. Emily Harper, the daughter of a decorated colonel, mysteriously vanishes. After uncovering troubling connections between her father's colleagues and defense contractors. When the authorities hit dead ends, her cousin, Nathan Cole, an experienced FBI agent, arrives to investigate. He uncovers a world of insider trading, corruption, and dangerous power plays within military ranks. But time is running out. Will Nathan find Emily before she becomes another casualty of those seeking to protect their secrets? Drop a comment and share where you're joining us from. If stories like this resonate with you, hit subscribe so you don't miss our next inspiring journey coming tomorrow. The suburban streets near Fort Brighton, a large military base, exuded calm as the late afternoon sun bathed the neighborhood in golden light. Children played on neatly trimmed lawns, and veterans gathered outside a local cafe to trade stories. On the surface, everything seemed ordinary. But beneath that calm exterior, tensions simmered. Rumors of corruption within the base's higher ranks were spreading quietly among the locals. Emily Harper, 22 years old, adjusted her headphones as she stepped out of her family's house for her daily jog. As the daughter of Colonel James Harper, a decorated officer, she had grown up with the structure and expectations of military life. Yet something felt different lately. Conversations ended abruptly when she entered rooms. And strange, tense glances were exchanged between her father's colleagues. Earlier that day, Emily had overheard two officers talking in hushed tones in their driveway. "Harper's got to make a choice soon," one said. "If he doesn't..." The second officer cut him off when they noticed Emily nearby. She pretended not to hear and walked past. But the exchange left her uneasy. What choice did they mean? Was her father in some kind of trouble? Later that evening, Emily found her father in his study, seated at a large mahogany desk surrounded by military memorabilia. Colonel Harper was reviewing paperwork when Emily approached, hesitant but determined to speak up. "Dad," she began, closing the door behind her. "Can I ask you something?" Harper looked up, his stern face softening slightly. "Of course." "Emily, what's on your mind?" "I've noticed some odd things lately," she said cautiously. "People whispering, looking tense. I overheard a couple of officers talking about you. They mentioned you had to make a choice. Is something going on?" Harper leaned back in his chair and sighed. "Emily, I appreciate your concern, but there's nothing for you to worry about. Military matters can get complicated. It's probably just some bureaucratic nonsense." But they seemed serious. Emily pressed. "And you've been acting different too. Can't you tell me what's going on?" "Emily," Harper said firmly, his tone signaling the end of the discussion, "this is above your pay grade. Focus on your life. I've got everything under control." Frustrated but knowing she wouldn't get more out of him, Emily nodded and left the room. Yet her instincts told her there was more to the situation than her father was admitting. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Emily set off for a run through Brighton Park, a wooded area popular with local residents. The quiet path wound between tall oak trees, their shadows lengthening in the fading light. Despite the serene surroundings, Emily couldn't shake the unease lingering from her earlier conversation. Unbeknownst to her, a black SUV had parked near the park's entrance. Two men inside observed her movements carefully. One of them nodded to the other. "It's time." Emily, lost in thought and music, didn't notice the vehicle until she rounded a bend and saw it parked just ahead. She slowed her pace, removing her headphones as a faint sense of danger crept in. The SUV's engine was off, But the doors suddenly opened. "Hey!" Emily called out cautiously. "What's going on?" The men approached quickly. Emily turned to run. But they moved with practiced precision. One grabbed her arm, while the other clamped a hand over her mouth to stifle her scream. "Stay quiet. And you won't get hurt," one of them whispered coldly. Emily struggled, kicking and thrashing. But they overpowered her and dragged her toward the SUV. Within seconds, she was forced inside, and the vehicle sped off into the darkness. The park returned to an eerie stillness, with only a dropped water bottle and broken earphones left behind as silent witnesses. By the time anyone realized Emily was missing, crucial hours had passed. Colonel Harper received a call from one of Emily's friends who noticed she hadn't returned from her jog. The weight of his earlier dismissal of her concerns hit him hard as he stared at her empty room. Outside, the neighborhood remained oblivious to the storm that was about to break. Rumors of scandal were about to turn into a full-blown crisis. And Harper knew one thing for certain: this was no random disappearance. Nathan Cole was reviewing a stack of case files at his FBI field office in Chicago when his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, frowning when he saw Colonel James Harper's name. Nathan and his uncle weren't especially close, but something about the late-hour call told him it wasn't a social check-in. "Nathan, it's Emily. She's gone," Harper said without preamble, his voice tight with fear and anger. Nathan sat up straight. "What do you mean gone? What happened?" "She was out jogging in the park last night. No one's seen her since," Harper explained. "Her phone and headphones were found in the park, but no other signs. Local police are calling it a missing person case. But I know better. This isn't random. I need your help." Nathan's mind raced. He could hear the strain in Harper's voice. The colonel had always been composed, even in high-pressure situations. But this was different. "All right. I'm on my way. Hang tight. And don't let anyone stonewall the investigation until I get there." The next day, Nathan drove into Brighton, the quiet suburban town that bordered the sprawling Fort Brighton military base. Despite the picturesque neighborhoods and well-maintained streets, Nathan sensed an underlying tension. Military personnel moved about with stiff formality, and civilians avoided making eye contact with strangers. Something was clearly in the air. Nathan arrived at Harper's house and was greeted by his uncle, who looked visibly worn. They sat in the living room, where the colonel laid out the situation in detail. "There's been talk of an investigation into some military contracts," Harper admitted reluctantly. "Defense contractors. Insider deals. It's complicated. Now Emily's gone, and I can't shake the feeling this is connected." "Connected how?" Nathan asked, narrowing his eyes. "I've had pressure from certain people, executives, other officers, to approve questionable contracts. I pushed back. And then, this happens." Harper sighed heavily. "I didn't take it seriously enough when Emily started noticing things. She came to me with concerns, and I brushed her off." Nathan rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. "Sounds like someone's trying to send a message. But it could also mean Emily has information they don't want out. We'll find her." Nathan's next stop was the Brighton Police Department, where he met Detective Maria Lopez, who was assigned to the case. Lopez shook his hand but didn't seem particularly optimistic. "I appreciate you coming in, Agent Cole. But I need to be upfront. Since Emily's case involves both civilians and military personnel, there are jurisdictional complications," Lopez explained. Nathan raised an eyebrow. "Meaning what?" "Exactly. Meaning the military police have their own investigation, and we've been told not to interfere beyond basic coordination." Lopez said with a hint of frustration. They've been tight-lipped about what they know. Nathan sighed. He'd seen this kind of bureaucratic turf war before. What about witnesses? Surveillance footage? We canvassed the area. Lopez replied. One resident saw a black SUV parked near the park entrance around the time Emily went missing. But no one got a good look at the occupants. As for footage, the park's cameras were disabled for maintenance that night. Convenient timing, don't you think? Nathan's mind churned with possibilities. Convenient indeed. I need to speak with the military police commander. Later that afternoon, Nathan met with Major Alan Davis, head of the military police at Fort Brighton. Davis welcomed Nathan politely but maintained a professional distance. We're doing everything we can to locate Miss Harper, Davis assured him. However, the military has its own protocols. And I'm sure you understand that some information is classified. Nathan crossed his arms. I understand that someone's playing games while a young woman's life is on the line. I also understand that jurisdictional squabbles don't help anyone. Davis's jaw tightened. I don't disagree, Agent Cole. But my hands are tied by higher-ups. You'll need clearance from the base command to access certain details. Nathan leaned in slightly. Look, Major. You know as well as I do that if this case goes cold, it's on both of us. Help me cut through the red tape, and we might save her life. Davis hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. I'll see what I can do. But watch your back. There are powerful interests at play here. As Nathan left the base, he felt the weight of the obstacles ahead. Both the military and local authorities were caught in a web of conflicting priorities and political pressures. Emily's life hung in the balance, and Nathan knew he had to act fast before the trail went cold. Nathan Cole knew time was running out. After his tense meetings with both military police and local authorities, he decided to follow up on any personal connections Emily might have reached out to before her disappearance. His first stop was Brighton Community Center, where Emily occasionally volunteered. He found Jessica Walker, a friend and co-worker of Emily's, organizing supplies. Jessica appeared anxious when Nathan introduced himself. I heard about Emily, she said, her voice trembling slightly. Is it true she's missing? Yes. And I need your help to figure out what might have led to it. Nathan replied gently. Did she mention anything unusual recently? Anything that might have put her in danger? Jessica hesitated. She did seem worried about something. A few weeks ago, she told me she overheard a conversation between her father and some military officers. She didn't go into detail, but she said it sounded serious, like they were involved in something shady. Nathan nodded. Did she ever say who those officers were? No, but she said she was going to do some digging. Jessica added. She thought maybe some defense contractors had been bribing people at the base. She was afraid her father might be caught in the middle. Nathan continued his investigation by speaking to a few more of Emily's co-workers. Each conversation painted a similar picture. Emily had stumbled onto something connected to military contracts, and she seemed increasingly paranoid in the days leading up to her disappearance. The breakthrough came when Nathan reviewed Emily's phone records. He noticed several calls to a number registered to a Gerald Hayes, a logistics manager at Brighton Defense Solutions, a local contractor with ties to Fort Brighton. Nathan's instincts told him that this connection wasn't a coincidence. Digging further, Nathan requested access to local surveillance footage near the defense company's offices. After a few hours of analysis, he spotted something significant, a black SUV matching the description of the vehicle seen near the park on the night Emily vanished. The footage showed the vehicle entering a warehouse complex owned by Brighton Defense Solutions late that same night. That evening, Nathan drove to the warehouse district on the outskirts of town. The area was desolate, surrounded by empty lots and crumbling industrial buildings. He parked a safe distance away and observed the facility through binoculars. Trucks bearing the company's logo moved in and out, and armed guards patrolled the perimeter. Nathan noted the level of security. It was unusually high for a simple logistics operation. He pulled out his phone and made a secure call to Maya Reyes, a former intelligence operative and close ally. "Maya, I need a favor," he said. "I found a warehouse linked to Emily's disappearance. The place is crawling with guards, and I'm betting it's more than just a storage site. Can you run a background check on Brighton Defense Solutions?" "On it," Maya replied. "I'll get back to you with what I find. Be careful, Nathan. If they're guarding something that heavily, it's not going to be easy to get in." "I know," Nathan said, lowering his binoculars. "But if this is where they took Emily, I'm not walking away without answers." He ended the call and continued his surveillance. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fall into place. Emily had unknowingly stepped into a web of corruption involving military contracts, and whoever was behind it was willing to go to extreme lengths to keep their operation hidden. Nathan knew that the next step would be critical. One wrong move could cost both him and Emily their lives. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our channel. It means so much to us. Now, let's get back to the story. Nathan parked his car a few blocks from the Brighton Defense Solutions warehouse and approached the facility on foot, keeping to the shadows. He found a vantage point near an abandoned loading dock where he could observe the activity inside. Through a gap in the fence, he spotted several men, some in civilian clothes and others in military uniforms, gathered under dim floodlights near a row of trucks. A tall man in a military officer's uniform shook hands with a man Nathan recognized from his research, Gerald Hayes, the logistics manager Emily had contacted. They spoke in low tones, their conversation drowned out by the rumble of engines and the occasional clatter of equipment. Nathan zoomed in with his camera, capturing a series of photos of their interaction. He continued observing as crates marked with defense contractor labels were loaded onto the trucks. One of the contractors handed a briefcase to the officer, who nodded and gave what appeared to be an order to the guards. Nathan's instincts told him the briefcase contained either money or sensitive documents, evidence of the insider deals Emily had likely stumbled upon. As he adjusted his camera for another shot, Nathan noticed a guard approaching his position. He froze, quickly tucking his camera into his jacket and retreating into the shadows. The guard shined a flashlight along the fence line, lingering for a few tense moments before moving on. Nathan exhaled quietly, his pulse racing. He couldn't afford to be caught. He carefully made his way back to the perimeter, crouching low as he moved behind stacks of old shipping containers. Once he was far enough from the patrol route, he slipped through a hole in the fence and headed back toward his car. Later that night, Nathan contacted Captain Mark Reynolds, an internal affairs officer within the military who had a reputation for integrity. They met in a secure location outside the town, where Nathan laid out the evidence he had gathered. "This isn't just about bribes," Nathan explained. "Defense contractors are funneling money through fraudulent contracts, and military personnel are helping them. Emily got too close, and now she's missing." Reynolds studied the photos and nodded grimly. "You've uncovered a dangerous operation, Nathan. Some of the people involved have powerful connections. If you're not careful, they'll bury this in you." "I'm not backing down," Nathan replied firmly. "Emily's life depends on this." "Then tread carefully," Reynolds warned. "You're walking a fine line between justice and retribution." Nathan Cole arrived at Colonel Harper's house late in the evening, determined to confront him with the evidence he had collected. The tension in the air was palpable as Harper opened the door and gestured for Nathan to enter. They moved to the study, where the colonel, looking visibly weary. Poured himself a drink. Nathan set a series of photographs on the desk. These were taken at the Brighton Defense Warehouse, he began. Military officers making deals with defense contractors. It's all connected to the insider trading scandal. Emily found out something. Didn't she? Harper stiffened. His gaze fixed on the photos. After a long pause, he spoke. His voice strained. You don't understand the position I'm in, Nathan. They've been pressuring me for months, contracts that didn't make sense. Money moving through channels it shouldn't. I tried to push back. But these people, they don't play fair. Who are they? Nathan pressed. Defense executives? Officers? Someone has Emily. And we're wasting time unless you tell me everything. Harper exhaled slowly and sank into his chair. It's a network of contractors and senior officials. Gerald Hayes is one of them. They offered me bribes at first, then switched to threats when I wouldn't sign off on certain contracts. They made it clear my family would pay the price if I didn't cooperate. I think Emily was targeted because of me. Nathan's expression hardened. Why didn't you go to internal affairs? I couldn't risk it, Harper replied, shaking his head. People like Hayes have connections everywhere. I didn't want to believe it would come to this. But now my daughter is gone. Then we're out of options. Nathan said. You need to work with me. We can't play by their rules anymore. Harper nodded reluctantly. All right. What's the plan? The next morning, Nathan began escalating his investigation. But it didn't take long for those involved in the conspiracy to retaliate. As he drove through a quiet stretch of road on the outskirts of town, he noticed a black SUV tailing him in the rearview mirror. He maintained his speed, pretending not to notice. But his mind raced as he considered his options. Suddenly, the SUV accelerated, pulling alongside his car. One of the passengers rolled down the window, revealing a man aiming a weapon. Without hesitation, Nathan swerved hard, narrowly avoiding gunfire as he maneuvered onto a side road. The SUV pursued him aggressively, tires screeching as both vehicles weaved through the narrow streets. Nathan spotted an upcoming intersection and made a sharp turn, leading his pursuers into a construction zone. He floored the accelerator, speeding past barriers and equipment. The SUV struggled to keep up on the uneven terrain. Finally, Nathan saw an opening and took it, slipping through an alleyway too narrow for the larger vehicle. He parked in a hidden lot several blocks away, catching his breath. His phone buzzed with a call from Maya Reyes. Your suspicions were right, Maya said. I tracked some of Hayes' associates. They've got private security firms working for them, mercenaries. Not just bodyguards. They just tried to run me off the road. Nathan replied grimly. They're getting desperate. Be careful, Maya warned. These guys won't stop until they either scare you off or eliminate you. Nathan clenched his jaw. They're not scaring me off. I've dealt with worse. I'll keep the pressure on. Later that day, Nathan visited Detective Maria Lopez, who confirmed that military contractors had been tightening their grip on the local authorities. Several officers had received anonymous warnings to stay away from Emily's case. They've got everyone under their thumb, Lopez said bitterly. But I'll help where I can. Just know that things are about to get even more dangerous. I'm counting on it, Nathan replied. We're getting close. They wouldn't be this aggressive if they didn't know we were onto something. With each step forward, the web of deception tightened around Nathan. But he remained resolute. The people who had taken Emily underestimated how far he was willing to go to bring her back and to dismantle the corrupt network that had put her life in danger. Emily Harper sat on the cold concrete floor of a dimly lit storage facility. The air was heavy with dust and the faint scent of oil. Her wrists ached from the tight restraints that had only recently been loosened. 2 armed guards stood outside the door, their low conversation barely audible. Emily knew she couldn't rely on anyone but herself to get out of this situation. Her captors had tried questioning her several times, pressing her for details about her father's connections to defense contractors. Each time, she had maintained that she didn't know anything, though she suspected that refusing to cooperate was only prolonging her captivity. "You all right?" a voice whispered softly from the shadows of the room. Emily turned to see Angela, a girl of about 19 with curly brown hair and a weary expression. Angela had been brought in a few days earlier and had barely spoken until now. "Yeah," Emily replied quietly. "As all right as I can be in a place like this. What about you?" Angela shrugged. "Could be worse. At least they haven't roughed us up yet. My name's Angela. I used to work for one of the contractors involved in all this. I think they grabbed me because I overheard something I wasn't supposed to." Emily moved closer, curiosity piqued. "You know what's going on?" "Sort of," Angela admitted. "It's a lot of shady stuff, fraud, illegal deals, bribes. I guess your dad refused to play along, so they're using you as leverage." Emily clenched her jaw. "They'll regret that. We just need a way out of here." Angela leaned in conspiratorially. "I've been watching the guards. They change shifts every 6 hours. There's a supply room down the hall with an emergency access panel. If we can create a distraction, I think we can get to it." Emily considered the plan. It was risky, but they didn't have many options. "What kind of distraction?" Angela smirked. "Leave that to me. One of the guards is easy to provoke. I'll get him riled up. And when they're distracted, you make your move." Emily nodded, determination hardening her features. "All right. Let's do it." As they whispered details back and forth, a spark of hope ignited within Emily. She wasn't going to let her captors control her fate. Together, she and Angela would find a way out, and soon. Nathan Cole crouched behind a tactical vehicle just outside the perimeter of the abandoned military storage facility. A joint team of FBI agents and trusted military personnel surrounded him, waiting for his signal. The operation had been planned carefully, with each team assigned specific entry points to cut off any escape routes for the guards inside. Nathan gave a hand signal, and the team moved swiftly under the cover of darkness. Agents used bolt cutters to quietly breach the chain link fence while snipers positioned themselves on nearby rooftops to provide overwatch. "Teams Alpha and Bravo, move in," Nathan ordered through his earpiece. Within moments, the stillness of the night shattered as the guards inside spotted the intruders. Gunfire erupted, echoing through the complex. Nathan stayed low as bullets ricocheted off the metal walls around him. His team returned fire, systematically pushing forward and clearing each section of the facility. "Hold the east side," Nathan barked as 2 guards attempted to retreat toward a back exit. An agent took them down with precision shots, preventing their escape. Nathan moved swiftly through the chaos, relying on his instincts and training. He knew time was critical. Emily could be anywhere inside, and there was no telling how her captors would react once they realized the facility was under siege. "Bravo team, cover me," he shouted, darting toward one of the main storage buildings. 2 agents flanked him as they breached the door, clearing the area room by room. In the distance, he heard muffled voices and a scuffle. Following the noise, Nathan found a locked storage room. He motioned for an agent to cover him as he kicked the door open. Inside, he saw Emily and Angela, both looking exhausted but alert. "Nathan," Emily gasped, relief washing over her face. Emily, we're getting you out of here, Nathan said firmly. He quickly checked her and Angela for injuries. Can you both walk? We're fine, Emily replied. Let's go. Nathan guided them through the facility, keeping his weapon raised as they moved. More agents secured the remaining guards, and the firefight began to die down. By the time they reached the perimeter, the facility was fully under control. Outside, Nathan signaled for the medics to assist the captives. He stood guard as Emily and Angela were checked for injuries, his mind already focused on the next steps. They had survived the raid, but the fight against the powerful forces behind this conspiracy was far from over. Nathan Cole stood at the edge of a brightly lit conference room in Brighton Defense Solutions headquarters, flanked by FBI agents and military investigators. Across the room, Victor Mason, the company's CEO, sat calmly at a polished table, his hands folded. His expression was one of controlled arrogance, as if the raid on the storage facility and the arrests of his operatives were minor inconveniences. I hope you know the implications of this overreach, Mason began in a measured tone. I have powerful allies. Agent Cole, whatever evidence you think you've gathered won't hold in court. Let's talk about a deal. Nathan remained silent for a moment, studying Mason's smug demeanor. He placed a folder containing incriminating documents on the table and opened it slowly, revealing photographs, transaction records, and communications intercepted during the operation. Deals are for people who have leverage, Nathan finally replied. You've got none left. We have witnesses, digital records, and an entire warehouse full of illegal assets tied directly to your company. Your people have already started talking. Mason's smile faded slightly, but he leaned forward. You don't know how deep this goes. Taking me down won't stop the system. Maybe not, Nathan said, stepping closer. But it will stop you from hurting anyone else. With a sharp nod, Nathan signaled to the agents. One of them handed him a pair of handcuffs. He approached Mason, who stood reluctantly, glaring at Nathan with barely concealed fury. You're making a mistake, Mason said coldly as Nathan secured the cuffs around his wrists. I won't go down quietly. You already did, Nathan retorted. The people you tried to silence, Emily, Harper, and Angela, they're going to testify. You'll answer for everything. A short while later, Emily and Angela sat in a secure briefing room, recounting their experiences to the investigative team. Their testimonies provided key details about the threats, intimidation tactics, and insider deals orchestrated by Mason and his network of collaborators. Emily's voice was steady as she spoke. They wanted leverage over my father. They thought they could use me to force him into signing off on fraudulent contracts. Angela nodded in agreement. I overheard conversations about bribes and hidden accounts. Mason thought no one would ever come after him. Nathan stood nearby, listening intently. With their statements, the case against Mason and his co-conspirators was ironclad. The fight was far from over, but this victory marked a turning point. The shadows that had loomed over Brighton were finally being brought into the light. In the aftermath of the raid, military and corporate officials implicated in the corruption scandal were swiftly arrested. Federal investigations into fraudulent defense contracts expanded, uncovering more illicit deals tied to high-ranking officers and executives across multiple regions. The scandal sent shockwaves through both the military and the defense industry, sparking reforms aimed at preventing similar abuses. Colonel James Harper quietly retired from his position, publicly acknowledging his failures to act sooner. In private, he vowed to Emily that he would make amends and work to protect others from the same threats that had endangered their family. Nathan Cole stood at the edge of Fort Brighton, watching as news crews reported the arrests. The weight of the mission settled heavily on him. Corruption within powerful institutions was deeper and more pervasive than he had imagined. Betrayal had come from those sworn to uphold duty and trust, a sobering reminder of the complexity of justice. As Nathan returned to his car, his phone vibrated. A cryptic text message appeared on the screen: "This isn't over. There are more players in the game." Nathan's jaw tightened. The fight was far from finished. He knew he would have to remain vigilant for what was coming next. The story highlights the fragile nature of trust within institutions and the moral conflicts faced by those in positions of power. Nathan Cole evolves from a determined investigator to someone who understands the deep-rooted complexities of military and corporate corruption. His experience reshapes his approach to justice, realizing that systemic change requires both perseverance and integrity. Meanwhile, Emily Harper transforms from a sheltered young woman into a resolute advocate for justice, determined to protect others from exploitation. Together, they embody the courage needed to confront entrenched corruption and rebuild trust in the institutions meant to serve and protect. Justice has been served. But Nathan's warning reminds him, this isn't over. What do you think Nathan and Emily should do next? Let us know your theories in the comments and hit subscribe for more thrilling stories. Share your thoughts in this story with others. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.